Hello, everyone. Welcome to this grid talk. Thanks for joining myself and Mark. We're going to give you an introduction to MethodGrid's AI chat assistant, which will be released into the product in the coming weeks. First of all, let's do some quick intros. My name is Jody. Hello. I'm head of product technology at MethodGrid and also one of the co-founders, and I'm joined by my colleague Mark.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark. I am a lead AI developer here at MethodGrid, also a PhD researcher at Durham University in everything AI.
Thanks, Mark. And today we're going to take you through a few things AI in MethodGrid. So first of all, I'll jump off to a screen share and we'll do a demo of the AI chat as it's live now in MethodGrid and the various things you can do with it. Then Mark's going to give us a bit of detail of how it works behind the scenes, the data security. We'll then go into future development of this chat and directions we can take, future ideas, perhaps get your votes on some of those ideas. And then we'll go into a Q&A. My colleague Tom is posting in the chat. So if you've got questions, you can put them in the chat, or there's a special questions tab as well. When we get to the future development, I'll publish a poll and you can vote on the ones that you like. So yeah, any questions or anything you want to say in the chat, feel free, it's there. We'll have a dedicated Q&A section at the end, but feel free to post the questions in as you think of them. We're not hard and fast to the end. So without further ado, I will go into the demo. So hopefully now you can see my screen. I'll just full screen that. There we go. So hopefully you can see MethodGrid now. Just click that, make sure it's all working for you. Okay, here we are in MethodGrid. So I'm in a grid. This is based on the Praxis project management framework, which is a framework you can actually download from the Grid store, which you will find in here under Grid Examples. If you wanted to have a look at this Praxis grid, it's just a direct clone of the one from the store. It's laying out the stages of the Praxis framework, all the information in the elements as usual. If you're familiar with MethodGrid, this will all be familiar to you. For the purposes of the demo, I've also assigned lots of the elements and tasks, giving it various RAG and flag, just so we've got some data for the AI assistant to use. So taking this Praxis project grid, we've set up what you already have in MethodGrid is the AI settings for a grid. So important to say that the AI chat will take these two settings, so your tone and language and the context. It won't use the AI sources from the library as they're just used for content generation, not for the chat at this time. So in tone and language, I've just got a short prompt for it, write in a professional tone in short, concise sentences using UK English. And then I've given it some context and further instructions in here. So I've told it that this grid represents a project being delivered with the Praxis project management framework. I've given it some instructions about answering the questions, try to use the content in the elements, give me links to elements as sources. I can put near enough anything in here to ground this grid in whatever I want and give it any context.
Yeah, so, I think that those instructions are mostly just for, I think, firstly, tuning the output to a format that you want it to, if there's a particular format you want it to respond in. And also, yeah, as Joe was just saying, to give it any extra context that you think it might need. You know, as ever with AI, you know, the quality of the output you get is a consequence of the quality of the input you give it. And so giving it more context or more information is always a good thing. Even data, you know, a lot of that it could probably infer from the information it can find in the grid, but it's always good to, you know, give AI more information, more context about what you want and what you want it to do.
Yeah, and thanks for that. Anything extra you want to go with the chat prompts can live in context that you don't want to, that you want it to go with all of them essentially. So to open up the chat, I hit the AI assistant button here. I've got the chat, it's waiting for a prompt down here. I can clear it if I've got existing chat going on. It'll remember the previous chat. So we'll see when I come back into it, it'll remember the chat that's ongoing. if you have got one ongoing. We've put some quick prompts in here to suggestions for prompts. I'll use some of those later on when we look at data. But I'm going to start it off by showing how it can surface knowledge in this grid. So I've got some prompts ready. I'm going to copy and paste them in. So I'm going to ask it, can you tell me how I should be capturing lessons learned? And the point being, it is grounded in this grid's information, and it will give me instructions based on what it finds in this grid. So let me post that up. So it's now received that. It's taking the data from the grid, and it's also got my context and the way it should do it. So, excuse me. It has found information about capturing lessons learned, and it's given us a reference as to where it's found it. So it's found it in the lessons log and in an element called capturing lessons learned. I can open that up, and there it is. So it's taken those hints and tips from the section in this element, and if I go back to the assistant, you'll see it's pulled that back from the element and the knowledge that's in the element. And it's given me two reference sources, if you like, for the content above, one being this one and one being an element, which is all around the lessons learned log.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good example to kind of show that it's, it's not just reading one specific element and regurgitating that. It can find if the relevant information about what you've asked it about is spread out through the grid, or it needs to pick up information from a couple of different places, it can do that and kind of summarize all of that for you, and then obviously link you to the relevant places if you want to actually go into each of the elements yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm asking quite specific questions in this, but
yeah,
if I asked a wider ranging question, it would answer based on information from varied elements and source those as well. So if I take perhaps the next logical prompt would be, can you find and provide a link to the element with the blank lessons learned log template? So I want to start capturing lessons learned. And it should assess that prompt. And it's telling me that that blank lessons learned template is in the template section of this element. And here it is. It actually links up. And that is actually the template ready to go for me to use. And it's also suggesting that I explore more of the information in this element. You can see it's very quickly found what I was looking for and given me a good summary. I'll do one more subject so we can see it in action there. I'm going to ask it a question about a communication management plan. So I can choose to just carry this on. It will still be in context, or I could completely start a new chat. So I've asked it, what are the key things I need to know when developing the communication management plan? And here we are. It's summarized that into 10 points and signposted me to where I can get more information from this grid, which is where it will have taken a lot of those from there. And the second one here, which is giving me communication plan, format and composition, all based on Praxis and all coming from this grid. So you can see it's very effective at finding knowledge content from within a grid.
Yeah, I think as well, important point to make here, which I mean, every time we talk about anything to do with AI, we kind of always make this point. You can see the big warning at the bottom that, AI, you need a healthy degree of skepticism whenever you're working with AI input. And, while obviously the AI is as accurate as we can make it, one of the important points is you always want to know, where's the AI getting this information from, so that you can feel confident essentially that it's not hallucinating. It's the information it's giving you is actually grounded somewhere, and you can then go back to the primary source of that information to see where the AI's got that information from. That was always, I think, a kind of an important part of interacting with any AI chat is to ground it in the information it's found in the grid, and to also link back to it so that you can see where that information has originally come from.
Yeah, and it's been engineered in such a way that it's completely integrated with MetaGrid. So these links, as you can see, are opening up the information I need straight away, and I can just close this and go and further study the developed communication plan element.
Yeah, just very quickly before we move on, a quick question from Angie saying that she doesn't see the icon for it. So I think we should quickly explain. I think we were going to get into this later, but quickly explain now the kind of rollout.
So this is in production MetaGrid. It's going through its final internal testing, and then its next stage we will be rolling it out to clients that want early access to it. So your account manager and customer success will be in touch if you would like to be in that initial cohort, and we will enable it for your account, and that should be happening in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, this is one of the interesting things about developing AI features versus more kind of traditional features is around testing and verification. That we want to make sure it works in real world examples. So that was kind of we're doing this sort of staged release of it to kind of ensure the quality of the AI output is what it needs to be, and is what we'd expect it to be. Before kind of rolling it out further, which is why, as Jody said, we're doing this kind of staged release. But certainly, as Jody said, we'll be in touch about getting it enabled.
Yeah. So many people will be able to have early access to it. There's no sort of criteria. So if you would like it, well, you can have it basically. And then what we will be hoping for is your feedback on how it's performing on your grid knowledge and data. Yeah. Let me show a new example. So that's surfacing knowledge information for any user of this grid. I'm now going to. It's also grounded in the MetaGrid help, so you can ask it for help in how to use MetaGrid. If I come in here now, I can clear and start a new chat. So let's remove that chat history, and I'm going to ask it some questions about MetaGrid. I'm going to first ask it, how do I set baselines in the grid Gantt chart, which is a fairly complicated use case in the Gantt chart. And now, because it's grounded in our help knowledge base, it should be able to answer that very succinctly. And it's also inserting animated images that we have in our help to show you how to do that in context and on there. And it's provided a link to the full help article here. You see that URL at the bottom of my screen. That's going off to our help article, but essentially it has summarized and replicated the entire help article here. So you now know.
Which again, I think it's, I mean, I'm going to make the same point again about, you always want to know where the AI's got that information from, and you can see at the bottom there, it has linked to the original source. So if you want to verify or get more information, you can follow that link and back to the primary source that the AI is getting the information from.
Exactly. So it's always going to give that source link, source information. I'll ask another question about baselines. How do I show baselines? So as long as it can find the answer in our knowledge base, it will be able to answer any questions about how you use MetaGrid. And there we go. It's sourced the help article, which is how do I display baselines? And it's given us a summary of that article explaining how to do it. And it's also brought in the useful animated GIF to show you how to do it.
We've got another quick question from Sam asking, so does the AI build up an institutionalized memory when asking multiple questions, or does it reset its own memory back to default? So the answer to that is, when you're within one conversation, one chat, it stores that chat. So if you refer to something you've said earlier on, or you ask a follow-up question, it will know that, it'll carry on the conversation. When you're starting a completely new conversation, it doesn't remember the previous conversations you've had with it. And also in terms of the sort of institution, sort of organizational knowledge, it doesn't share information between different chats that people are having, which is kind of very deliberate from a sort of data security point of view. We'll get into this a bit more when we start talking about what data the AI uses, but there's very sort of careful safeguarding around what information the AI has access to. And I think the most important point for this, again, we'll get into it a bit more later, is that the AI doesn't have access to anything that you don't have access to. You can't start asking it questions about other projects that you don't have access to, or other things within your organization that you shouldn't have access to. It won't answer them because it doesn't have access to that information when you're talking to it. I think a future direction for new features would be adding some sort of carefully controlled, curated organizational knowledge, which we'll get into in a bit. But yeah, for now, it remembers the current conversation you're having, but it doesn't store or remember anything beyond that. Again, partly for kind of data security considerations.
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Mark. So we've shown it answering questions essentially about the grid content, answering questions about how you use method grid. To take it now a stage further, we can also have it tell us and analyze delivery data that is in this grid. So we've got some prompts here that can start you off. I'm going to start with this one. So in a table, show me the number of tasks assigned to each member in this grid. Now, all this button does is put the prompt in here and submit it. Incidentally, if you have any ideas for system suggested prompts, please let us know, put them in. Okay, so it's summarized there. So I can see these are all the people who have got tasks assigned to them, and this is the number of tasks assigned to each person. Just to show you, sort of make that point that I am now into that we just spoke about the chat. So I'm going to carry on in this chat working with that data. So it's remembering the context of the chat. So I've said, thanks, can you add a column and show me how many elements assigned to each member? So within elements, we have tasks. Elements can also be assigned. So I'm asking it to add that column so I can see how many elements are also assigned to each member. So there we go. I can see that Tom's got 19, Barrel Builder's got 23. Just to show you that it's getting it right. I mean, if I take Barrel Builder, 23 elements assigned, I can kind of replicate that by using our grid filter here, by checking assign to Barrel Builder. You'll see now it's found up here, 23, which is the answer I had. So we've taken that there. So you can kind of work with any delivery data that's in the grid, flags, RAG, completion dates. If I wanted to take that out, I can also prompt it to give me an Excel file. And it will now put this into an Excel file for me to download. So I simply download this file. Oh.
I mean, live demo, isn't it?
Live demo, yeah.
This has worked every time we've run through it.
The idea, but that would now give me the Excel file to download. It's decided I don't have access to the temporary storage where it is. But that would then be that same table in an Excel file, and I can work with it. I mean, I could have just as easily copied and pasted it into an Excel file as well. So that's working with basic data. To give a table, to give me an Excel file. I'll take it a bit further. If I clear this now and start a new one. So I'm going to use the quick prompt again, just for ease. So I want it to show me the RAG breakdown for this grid by counting the number of elements that are red, amber, and green and put the results into a table for me. So it's going to count each one of these elements behind here and tell me how much are in each. So I can keep, just to prove so that I can keep manipulating this data. Perhaps I don't want the no RAG. Can you remove the none data from the table? Interesting to see if it recognizes none or if it's going to go with no RAG. Yes, okay, it's recognized. So now I've just got the red, amber, and green, and I've excluded the none. And I will now ask it to plot that into a chart for me So I can say, can you put this data into a bar chart for me? And it will think about it. And there we go. There's my bar chart based on the data 1288 into this bar chart. You can right-hand click on these and just use the browser controls to save that image if that's what you want. Or, I mean, of course, you could have just taken this data or any data that you produce in here, put it into Excel and then make your own charts. I know that some people internally like a battery chart for these things. So I'm asking now, can you put the same data into a battery chart for me? It doesn't always recognize battery chart. I think I might have made up that name. Let's see if it can do it. There we go. So yes, that is my definition of a battery chart. It's put them into percentages along a single line bar. So there you go. You can see it producing images. Again, these are being produced by the AI model and then sent back as images.
To kind of Sam's question earlier about the memory, as you can see in this conversation, you can refer to things earlier on within one conversation and kind of ask follow-up questions, ask the AI to add certain things or refine its output within the one conversation. Like they're not, each message isn't like a totally discrete separate thing. But within the one conversation, you can have a back and forth, ask follow-up questions, things like
that. So just to end the demo, I'm going to change for fun to show you that the tone and language is being sent each time. If I change this to not be English anymore, but to write in the style of a pirate, I'll leave the context the same. But now when I start the chat, it will be sent this as the tone and language prompt instead, and we will get a very different response. So I'm going to clear it again. I'll ask that same question about lessons learned, and we can see how it translate that into pirate talk. There we go. Fair winds and successful lessons, fellow navigator. And I think that's a tiny pirate flag that it's put in as well. Okay, so it's done a bit of pirate talk on, but essentially it's done the same information again, and it's of course given me the link to where it got the information from for this particular prompt. There you go. So you can see that you can set the tone and language to your own style guide and your own language guide, which is probably not a pirate.
Yeah, I mean, I think to say with that, you can kind of put whatever you want in there in terms of the style. Like if you want it to be more verbose or more concise, you can say that in there. US versus UK English. I mean, if you wanted to speak in a completely different language, you could say always respond in French. You can kind of put whatever you want in there in terms of the tone and the style it responds in.
Okay, so that draws to the end of our demo. Keep the questions coming.
Yeah, I've got a question from Brab actually. If we so Brab's asking, if I've source grounded my element, can I use the AI assistant to analyze a set of requirements from reference data and output the requirements and references into Excel? So in terms of the source grounding, the AI assistant doesn't have direct access to the source grounding files, which was this was something we talked about and was an intentional design decision, because the source grounded files are kind of the files being used when you're building the element, less so when you're delivering it, because not everything in the source files will necessarily be relevant to the grid. That the way we think of that is more of a kind of build phase data, and then when you're using the AI assistant, it looks at the element data. So obviously it will be, a lot of that will have come from the source grounding originally, because it will then be in the element. And then certainly in terms of the next step of outputting any requirements into Excel, that's certainly doable, but it would be getting those requirements from the element, not directly from the original source, if that makes sense. Certainly in terms of what the AI has access to, for future development, we'll be adding what the AI knows and giving it more context and more information. But yeah, it doesn't have direct access to the sources that we use to build the element initially.
Which is probably a good segue, I think, into the next one. I mean, and to say, I mean, if the information was in the element, then I would say yes.
Element, essentially. I think our kind of view on it would be, if the information that was in the original sources, if that was relevant, then it would already be in the element, I guess, is the way we sort of think of it.
Yeah. And we did. So you'll see, well, there's a later slide where we're looking at some of the ideas around future development, and that is one of them, optionally including the source grounding libraries to ground the chat. But there's been some debate about whether that is a good thing or not a good thing. I think it would definitely be, when we do it, it will be optional. You would decide whether it's going to be included or not.
Yeah, because I think that our concern with that was that it would potentially add a lot of noise to the AI responses, because not everything in those documents is going to be relevant. But certainly, I can see people would have different opinions on that, and I can understand both sides of that.
Yeah. Sam has put another quick question in. Can you summarize the difference between a source grounded element in a deployed grid versus the AI agent?
Yeah, sure. So a source grounded element would be, if you go share your screen again, Jody.
Yeah,
open up an element. So when we talk about the source grounded element, what we mean is that the content within this element has been built with the help of AI using specific sources. So when this element has been built, someone has selected the various sources that they want, that, files, whatever,
and these are defined
to help build them. Yeah, they're in there. So these files here, you can kind of tick those off and say, these are the sources I want to use when I'm building out the content of this element. So that's what we mean when we talk about a source grounded element, is the content in the element has originally come from those sources. Then when we're talking about the AI assistant, that's more of based on what is in the element now, you can surface that knowledge. So again, it's not looking at the original sources, it's looking at what project data you have now at this moment versus looking at the sources themselves, if that makes sense. If that wasn't quite what you're asking, feel free to ask a follow-up.
Yeah, we have so to go back to this, so we have the AI settings, which sets the tone and the context for the whole grid. That is used by the chat. We then have AI source libraries, which are controlled centrally for the account over here. And then from all those source libraries, you decide which one this grid will be grounded on. So I've ticked these three. They're now, the documents in those libraries are now available to this grid when it's generating content, but at this stage, they're not available to the chat. The assumption being that you have used them to build the content. So the answers that are now in the elements, essentially.
Yeah, broadly speaking, the source grounding is kind of when you're building out the playbook, and then the AI assistant is more when you're delivering a specific project and you want to surface knowledge about that project or the playbook for that project.
Yeah. And I can, so these are now these three libraries are available to this element when you're building content in it. And I've told it, you're just using this one. And it would just, if I was now creating content in here, it would be grounded upon that APM project risk analysis.
Yeah, we do. We had one of these talks about the source grounding when we released it. It's up on our YouTube channel. So if you missed that and you want to learn more about the source grounding feature and how that works, go over to our YouTube channel, and it's up on there.
Okay, so let's have a little look at how this is all working in the background. I'll let you take over now, Mark.
Thank you. Yes. So, I mean, the first question that everyone always asks us when we start talking about any AI features is about data security, and rightly so. It's a very important question to ask. What information are we giving to the AI? What is the AI doing with that information? Where's it being stored? Is the AI being trained on any of your data? Is there any risk to that data being shared with anyone else? So we'll kind of get into that a little bit. So what data is actually being sent to the AI when you're having a conversation with it? So there's broadly speaking 3 different formats that the AI, I'll go into a little bit of technical detail, not too much about this. There's these 3 different formats that the AI gets information in. The first simply is just as part of the prompt. We just send some of the information, usually relatively small snippets of information, just in the system prompt, as when you're talking to, if you're talking to Copilot or to Gemini or to any other AI, and you can speak the system prompt that the AI has. So, for example, the language and tone settings that Jodie just changed to talk like a pirate, that sort of relatively small bit of text data is just sent directly to the AI as text. It's fairly simple, it's fairly small. The second type of data is what's called vectorization, or we have this vector database. Now, this is used for much larger amounts of text data. So all of the information that's in the grid, all of the text data in the elements, in the stage gates, etc. This is the format that all of that data will get sent in. And what vectorization essentially means, if the previous webinar that I just mentioned about source grounding, we went into quite a bit of detail about how this works and its implications for data security. So if you do want to learn more about this, Tom has just posted a link to that to our YouTube channel. So feel free to give that a watch after you finish watching this. But briefly, what it means is all AI models, they work with numbers rather than text. Even language models that are communicating in language, they fundamentally work with numbers. So what vectorization, or you might see it referred to as embedding, what that is about translating text data into numbers so that it's in a form that the AI can more easily understand. And that's what we do here. We take all of the text data, we vectorize it, we turn it into numbers. That is then stored so that when you ask the question, the AI a question, for example, when Jodie was just asking a question about lessons learned, it can search the vector database, it can find the relevant bits of information, and then it can give you that information and can tell you where it got it from. The third type is we have this JSON data. Now, JSON data is not specific to AI. It's just a way of structuring data. It's been used for decades within computers. Your browser, when you're connecting to a web server, will often communicate it within JSON data. But what it is very good at in terms of AI is doing data analysis. So any sort of quantitative data that we have in the grid, when Jodie, for example, was asking, can you give me a table of assignees, that sort of quantitative data, any sort of data analysis like that, that is when the AI will use this JSON data, which is more highly structured than the text data that's in the vectorization database. And so the AI can easily parse through it and look over it and extract quantitative data from it. And broadly speaking, when you interact with the AI, the first thing it does is it decides, okay, what information do I need to answer this question, and where can I get that information from? Is it in the prompt? Is it in the knowledge I already have? Do I need to go to this vectorization? Do I need to find some text to answer this question? Or do I need to do some data analysis? And it'll look in the appropriate place depending on what you've asked it. So in terms of the content that it actually has access to, so it has access to all of the information in the grid. So the element content, stage gate content, task data, some information about members who are in the grid. So you can ask it about who's, for a breakdown of what elements are assigned to who. The important point again, I mentioned this briefly before, but from a data security point of view, the AI doesn't have access to anything that you don't have access to. So when you're talking to it, you can't start asking it questions about things that you shouldn't have access to. You can't start asking about other projects. that you don't have access to, because it won't be able to answer that because it doesn't have that information when you're talking to it. Other things it doesn't have access to, the AI build sources, which we've talked about, was a deliberate choice because we kind of view those as being a separate stage. And as we said, including them would add quite a lot of noise that in a lot of cases isn't necessary. There's been some discussion about whether or not people would want that. But as Jody said before, if we do have that, it would very much be an optional thing, because I don't think we would necessarily want the AI to be looking through a bunch of potentially irrelevant documents when looking for answers. The files that are uploaded to the grid, it currently doesn't have access to. Again, its focus is on the actual content within the elements, and similarly comments that are on the elements or stage gates or in the grid itself, it currently doesn't have access to. These are all things that are potentially we're going to add in the future, if we think that's something people would want and there's a good use case for it. Hopefully all that made sense. If there's any questions about any of that, about what the AI is doing with the data or any, please do ask. But we'll talk a bit more about the data security side of it now. So this is a overview of where the data is going when you're talking to the AI and what's happening to it all. So if we start off over on the left here, this is within the method grid infrastructure, so within your browser or within our servers. And so the AI, when you ask it something, that prompt goes to our servers. It collects all of the relevant data, so the data around the grid, the context of it, your tone and language settings, etc. They are then sent over to our secure Microsoft Azure infrastructure. And this is something, again, that we always get asked whenever we talk about AI. This Azure infrastructure, all of the AI we use is hosted on Azure. It is not shared with anyone else. It is not shared with any other AI models or anything like that. All of the data that is stored on there is obviously encrypted and stored in accordance with all of Microsoft's usual policies. Anything that would be usually stored on Azure servers. It then collects all of the relevant information, like that vector database I mentioned earlier, all of the JSON files that it needs in order to answer your question. Again, all of that is stored securely on our private Azure instance. And then that information is then sent back to method grid. If it needs to save anything, that is saved in our servers the way anything is. And then it's obviously returned to you in the kind of chat interface. Again, all of this, when it's being sent between these different places, it's all encrypted, as you'd expect. When it's stored anywhere at rest, it's all encrypted. In terms of the data going into the AI model, it's a private AI model. It's not shared with anyone else. There's no risk of that data leaking out or being seen by anyone else in their conversations. I think that's everything on there. I don't think there's anything to add there, Jody, is there?
Probably the next slide it covers a lot of Azure's policies, but yeah, important to say as well, the data's not used to train anything, which is always one of our number one questions as well. Is the data being used to train a model? To which the answer is no.
Yeah, Sam's made a good point actually about what we were just talking about with the source grounding files, saying that it reinforces the point of the importance of good elements and stage gate content control. You have good governance around that requires regular reviews and updates in case the AI system falls behind over time, which I think is a great point. I think the content of the grid of the playbook within your elements and stages, that ultimately is the source of truth for your processes. So yeah, that's why the AI kind of prioritizes that when you're asking questions about it. Yeah, that is a great point.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it reinforces why initially we haven't put the source libraries in.
Yeah,
because the elements, in good practice, would be a succinct version of those for users to find what they're looking for quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a look at them? look at Azure's next one. I think there's
Yeah. So this is Azure's Microsoft's policy for its use of AI models on its platform. Again, this is our own private method grid instance of these things. It's not something that's shared with anyone else. The whole document is available if anyone wants to go through the whole thing. But the kind of key points, I think, your data is never available to other customers. It's never shared with any model providers. It's never used to train a model. So there's no risk of data that is sent to it, either in your prompts or grid data. There's no risk of that being leaked out whenever anyone else is using an AI model, because the model isn't being trained on that data. Data is encrypted at rest in both MetaGrid and Azure, as you'd expect, just standard best practice there. It's always encrypted in transit. Azure, they only store the prompt and response data for 30 days for use monitoring purposes, which is permanently deleted. And we use Microsoft Azure's data zone deployment, which means all of the data is stored in the UK. So it's not, your data isn't sent to America for processing by the AI agent or anything like that. It's all stored, it's all sent, it's all processed completely within the UK, with the possibility of, where it's necessary, setting up separate instances in different countries as required. But currently and by default, it's all saved, stored, processed in the UK.
Yes, I think we made it in the previous slide. It's on Microsoft Azure, but there's nothing to say it couldn't be pointed at an internal model if you wanted to use that, or somewhere else. Yeah. It's not really anything anyone's asked for yet, but it's possible, and it's built in such a way as to be model agnostic.
Yeah,
it could go and live anywhere. Okay, thanks, Mark. I hope that gives everyone an understanding of how it's working, how the data's flying backwards and forwards, how it's stored. I mean, the fact that Microsoft stores it for 30 days as abuse monitor, it's all pretty standard for any model really that you're using. Okay, so let's have a look at some of our future development ideas. So before I get in there, I'm just going to publish, and hopefully you will see a poll in the chat area. There should be a little button that says polls. You can vote for multiple ones, but you can tick the ones that sound interesting to you. I'll just do a quick overview of them now. I'm pretty sure I've just published that. Yeah, I have. Okay, so these are just some of the ideas. I mean, the chat in MetaGrid will, this is an ongoing tool. It will become, to a certain extent, because it's so familiar as the interface of choice for AI interactions, it will become the interface of choice for AI interactions in MetaGrid. I know in the previous webinar we've done sort of sneak previews of the work we're doing around AI document drafting and AI document QA. A lot of that will take place in the same interface. So this kind of AI assistant interface in grids, or potentially in the whole account, will be here forever, and we'll be adding new features and new data for it to access so that it grows over time. So here's a few of the ideas that have come out in discussion with clients and internally. So an interesting one came out of a client discussion is role context. So telling the AI chat who you are when you're chatting with it, where you are, what your role is, where you're based, so that then if an element had two sections, one for if you're in France, one if you're in England, and it knows that you're in France, it could then respond with the appropriate information for your region, and it would know your role, and it can kind of tailor to your role. Something which we have demoed before and we want to take forward is the idea of grid manipulation. So you saw me asking it for a table of all the elements that are assigned to a person, or a list of all the ones that are assigned by all the members in there. Taking that a stage further, I could then say to it, I want you to assign all the ones that are currently assigned to Mark to Jody, and the agent would have access and know how to do that in MetaGrid, and it would subsequently do that for you.
Yeah, and I think we've got a couple of demos of that working. And I think the important thing with that, and the reason that we want to be, I would say, careful with how we develop that, is I think there's two things. One is auditing of, who did what. If the AI is doing something, there needs to be sort of clear auditing of who triggered that action. And secondly, if you're asking the AI to do very broad things, like assign everything to this person, that's quite a powerful action that we're giving the AI access to. So sort of tools around, undoing things the AI has done. I think that's a potentially very powerful tool, both in a positive sense and in quite a sort of potential. We need safeguards, undoing around it to kind of facilitate that sort of feature.
Yes, definitely the guardrails and that, and the "Are you sure?" kind of prompt around that would be quite important. Before you reschedule everything to next Tuesday, are you sure? Okay, so you can see how the area for grid manipulation is anything that you can click on and do in the grid. We would enable the chat to do that based on what you ask it to do. So probably particularly useful if you want to do large changes in bulk. It'll become very speedy for that, rather than you having to filter a table and select and click. It can do it all for you. The third one here is folder and account chat. So just taking our kind of hierarchical logic in MetroGrid. The current chat is in the grid, knows everything about the grid. If you took it up a level, grids live in a folder, potentially with other grids. And we already have that. This is the way people manage portfolios of projects in MetroGrid. So you might have a folder called Client Y, and in here there are 10 grids which are ongoing projects for Client Y. Within that folder, we have a Gantt chart, which actually provides you the Gantt view of all those projects together holistically. By the same idea, if you were to trigger chat in there, it becomes grounded on the 10 grids as opposed to just the one grid, and you can start to interact with them all. A complete replication of how it interacts with a single grid just across 10. So
I think again the important point to make with that again around data security is, even this portfolio or account level, the AI is still only going to have access to what you have access to. So even if you're looking at a full portfolio, if there's some project within that portfolio that you haven't been given access to, the AI isn't going to have access to either when you're talking to it.
Yeah, the chat's member specific as opposed to account wide specific. And taking that logic up, you go to the account level, you trigger the chat there. You're now dealing with the entire accounts data. That is largely a trickier thing to achieve, because you're clearly not going to want to ground it in every single grid, because that could be a tremendous amount of data for it to deal with. But we give you some controls about which grids would form its core source and things like that. But an account level chat. The fourth one there is comments data. So it doesn't currently have access to the comments in the grid. Simple enough to pass it the same JSON data containing all the comments. So you could then give you a summary. You could ask it give me a summary of all the comments that have been posted since last Tuesday, and it would be able to provide you with a summary of those comments in a simple way. And then something we've touched on quite a few times is the grid files and AI sources. So this is the idea, in the same way when you saw me going into the element and telling it which sources it can use for content gen, in the chat in a grid, you would say, I want this chat to have access to these source libraries, but possibly more importantly, I want the grid to have access to any files which have been uploaded in this grid. So it could be the templates that are available for people to fill in, but it could also be file evidence that gone up against tasks, which of course could contain a lot of useful project data, which the AI chat can then use. So if you ask it more information about the specific project, if that information was only contained in a file that had gone up, some kind of 80-page project brief, for instance, it would then have access to that, and it can start to summarize and answer questions on that. So files and AI sources, again, we make this configurable in the AI settings for the grid, and you the people with the appropriate access can decide. And the final one there is prompt suggestions. So you saw when we've put a few in there just to kind of get people thinking about what they can ask the chat to do. The next stage would be if I'm halfway through a chat, the AI itself would start to suggest prompts. So if I did the one where I said, show me all the RAG breakdown in this grid, it might then suggest, oh, do you want me to make this into a chart? Or, oh, do you want me to make this available as an Excel download? In context prompting to kind of keep the conversation going and help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, which I think that last one's quite an important one for, often I find with AI kind of chat features, part of the challenge of using them is knowing what they can do. So I think the AI telling you, oh, based on what you're trying to do, here's what else I can do for you, I think would be a useful one. Yeah,
because sometimes you don't even know what a chat can do. Can it?
Yeah.
Can it make me a video? Can it do this? It can't at this stage, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our ideas around future development. Keep any questions you've got coming in the chat. And I think for now we're into the Q&A. So if you've got anything you would like to ask about anything that we've gone over at this stage in this webinar, feel free to drop it in. Thanks for filling in the poll. I can see some results coming in. The top two, actually, let me go back a slide so you can see what they were. The top two is grid manipulation and grid files and sources, which is interesting. And the other ones are all, the other four are all equal. If you do want to get a vote in, please do. See if we've got any more questions. I think I can see some people typing with some questions coming in, so I'll hold off. Oh, happy Christmas, Ray. No worries. Thank you very much. So if there aren't any more questions, I mean, just a little trumpet blow on behalf of MetroGrid Marketing. We have had quite a lot of awards recognition this year. We've recently won APM Project Management Award for Small to Medium Enterprise of the Year, the new 7 Engineer Award. We've also been recognized in an AI use case showcase in the International Project Management Association for the R&D work we've been doing around document quality assurance, which I think is actually at the end of the webinar we did on source grounding. It's at the end of one of the webinars on the YouTube channel. If you search for document QA or AI QA, you will find that. Good watch, I'd recommend that. So that is my excellent duty done to marketing MetroGrid, but it's been quite a year for MetroGrid, as I'm sure you can see there. Suffice to say, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to leave them. But yeah, otherwise, thanks for joining us. As we sort of said, there's other videos we've got on our YouTube channel where we've talked about other related features. So feel free to check those out as well.
Okay. If there's no more questions, thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Have a good Christmas.
Happy New Year. Bye for now.